My name is Cindy, and I am here today to talk to you about interpersonal communication. And when you think of communication, most people, if you were to ask them, would probably say that they communicate well. Unfortunately, they probably really don't understand what interpersonal communication entails. I can think of a time specifically where I was at a therapist, and anybody that's been to therapy knows it can be very humbling and kind of a trying time when you're being honest about certain things in your life that maybe you've been not wanting to expose. And so I had mentioned something to her, and she did an immediate like she cringed, and she didn't mean to, I'm sure, but it really damaged that rapport with my therapist at that time. It made me feel like I wasn't safe to continue speaking with her about things that had occurred in my life. So that's just one example of interpersonal communication, because it's not just the words that we speak, it's the nonverbals that we display, whether it be with our hands, are we just just like we don't care? Is our mind going somewhere else and we're not focusing on what the talker is saying? Are we preparing for our defense because the talker has said something that we really don't appreciate, and therefore we're like adamant about getting our words in, therefore we're no longer listening to what the speaker is trying to convey to us. So this video is primarily a presentation of my interpersonal communication plan and goal. And because I have a real commitment to establishing and maintaining healthy, healing, helping, and a holy relationship through the use of my effective communication, which is a work in progress as I'm learning all the time how to be a better communicator. James 1:19 says, we should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And I think that's something that we really all should seriously think about when we're in communication. Interpersonal communication, this is a definition, is the exchange of information, feelings, and meaning through verbal and nonverbal face to face communication. So it's not just about the words spoken, as I said, but how it is said in the nonverbals attached with the message. So your tone of voice, facial expressions, gestures, and body language matter. So if your body language and nonverbals aren't matching your words, you are more likely than not to be displaying ineffective interpersonal communication, which is damaging to any and all relationships, as I had mentioned with the counselor that I had. Again, my personal goal is to become a group facilitator in rural, remote areas for crisis and trauma victims. That is what I want to do when I'm done, because I live in a very rural, remote area, and there just is nothing out there for those that really could use the help. Through this video, I'm going to identify my behavioral blend through an assessment called Uniquely You, how my background and identity behavioral blend has influenced my communication patterns, how I can improve on those background and identity influences, um, an outline of interpersonal communication barriers that I was quick to realize that I need to overcome, solutions to assist me in reaching my personal goals as being a group facilitator, my action plan for overcoming my personal barriers, and how this action plan will enhance my interpersonal communication to enable me to reach my goals. So when they talk about the behavioral blend, brief description of the assessment that I did is called the DISC. The DISC is, it's DISC. So the D is more for the active, outgoing, task-oriented individuals that I scored very low on. I is the active, outgoing, people-oriented that I would say I also scored low on. And then there's the S, which is the passive or reserved, people-oriented, which I scored extremely high on, and the passive, reserved, task-oriented, which I also scored low on. This tells me that I have things to work on. My This Is Me behavioral blend with the D. Well, I'm just going to focus on the S because that's what I was really high at, and this seems really good, but yet I'm low on other areas, so I need to balance that out. But my S tendencies seem to be things such as kind, nice, caring, gentle, soft, humble, peaceful, compassionate, patient, tolerant, which are all great things. Again, it needs to be balanced out. And then how my background and identity behavioral blend has influenced my communication patterns. So my background is I grew up on a small rural farm in a very chaotic alcoholic home where communication was done only through yelling. And I was the youngest of six children. I was modeled hurtful messages, aggression, and violence. And I grew up being seen and not heard. So that the power was always there. That was the main thing of my father, and so the rest of us, there was really no rights or the interest of us being taken into consideration. So I kind of did this thing here of you. Oh, maybe you can't see it, but anyway, it kind of shows the different in the graph how power had flipped. So that is no longer the main thing with me and my children or anybody else I'm in contact with. Improving on my background and identity influences. My background taught me that I like to be in control and to rely primarily on myself, as others could not be trusted. I have come to learn that I need people in my life, that self care is a need over a want, and that relaxation is not a reflection of laziness. I have learned that the need to be in control limits positive growth and change in myself and in my clients as well, as far as recovery. My I, the recognition and approval for me, my background offered no chance to verbalize and was met with no positive recognition. I have learned now that optimism can be just as dangerous as pessimism, and that after years of avoiding listening due to the chaos I was surrounded with, that listening should and can never be avoided with clients or friends if I'm to have healthy interpersonal relationships. The S of where I was equals stability and support, which was void of opportunities to take risk for improvement. My background modeled no safety or support, and now I have learned to embrace change and risk in life. And I now understand that discipline is not a naughty word when it's used in a loving way. And the C um, is of quality and correctness, where my background led me to believe that I could do nothing correct or quick enough and would never amount to much in life. Now I have learned that when external support might be lacking, that it's okay to lean upon God's support for guidance and security. I have become much more optimistic as I've worked through the victim mentality and as I have come to appreciate turning my trials into triumphs. James says in 1, verse 2 through 4, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. The interpersonal communication barriers. I don't have a lot of time left, but I really want to go through these because these barriers are very real to me and something I need to overcome. Ritualistic listening, as I mentioned kind of earlier, I tend to pay more attention of what I'm going to say next rather than focusing on the talker. I don't do this all the time, but if something strikes me, I start thinking, oh, how am I going to respond to that? Then I'm no longer listening to the talker. Allowing others to take on their own anger and expectations. I'm definitely a work in progress with this in knowing that I do not own another's problems. I got very burnt out a few years ago as an addiction counselor as I just could not leave work at work and I began working harder than the client themselves, which took away their empowerment. The need to listen without agreeing. I need to know that agreeing is not mean agreeing is not support. Um, as people want you to agree so that they may push blame and excuse their own behavior. So I can listen empathetically without necessarily agreeing to what the person has done. The solutions to assist me in reaching my personal goals are the three main parts of empathy, warmth, and genuineness. Empathy, for example, communicating, understanding to others. Warmth, recognizing one's worth despite what their behaviors are, and genuineness, to say what I mean and mean what I say and don't create broken promises. My action plan for overcoming personal barriers is to continue to gain the professional support I need for my own unresolved emotional issues, and that's okay. I need to avoid compassion fatigue to avoid secondary traumatization since I've had much, and I'm going to be dealing with people in crisis and trauma, and I deal with them now. I need to set limits and boundaries, and I need to know that I don't have to do this alone, and I need to maintain a self care. I reflect back a lot on Maslow's hierarchy as people's basic needs need to be met first before you can move forward. Um, there's the talker role, has three parts: the feeling, thinking, and open ownership. So talking opens us up for risk, but it needs to be done. But we need to caution head talk or passing judgment on the other. And we need to be cautious when sharing what we think, as our thoughts can be hurtful, inappropriate, or just poor timing. So we don't need to share everything that we think, and we always need to take the I statements. We don't want to push it off onto anybody else. It's only what I'm thinking or feeling at that time. The listener has three goals also: to provide safety, to understand, and to clarify. So as a counselor, I need to make sure that they feel safe by providing confidentiality, and I need to know that put myself in their shoes and that I don't do any have seen nonverbals like that were done to me, like shudder when they say something. What the Bible says about our communication with others. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. That's by Proverbs. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Ephesians. What the Bible says about talking too much. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is folly and shame. By Proverbs. What the Bible says about being a good listener. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Again, that's in Proverbs. My conclusion, I'd like to include Isaac Newton. He made one of the best all time quotes when he stated, "What we know is a drop, what we don't know is an ocean." So the possibility of ever getting to know one's ocean is an impossibility. No skills, no magic potions can ever make the unknown a known. So the best we can do as helpers is to listen as Jesus did, with compassion, so we can recognize their suffering.